Man, the Oklahoma Sooners are already falling in the SEC.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Jay Smith. John is out enjoying some time off, and this is Locked On Sooners. And fortunately, you get an evening edition compared to the typical morning because my traveling kind of was off a little bit and started to come down with the cootie. But we're going to talk about this article by The Athletic as they talked about, who's rising, who's falling after the portal window. We'll also dive into some OU men's basketball, wrap things up talking the Super Bowl. So bear with your boy. But first thing is the Athletics article. They're diving into each team. They picked some teams that they felt like were rising, who was falling based upon the past spring window and last evaluation. So like some of the risers, they have Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Missouri, and South Carolina, some neutrals in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt. But they closed out with falling, with Oklahoma being one of those teams. And this is the quote that The Athletic gave us. They say, yes, the Sooners signed Washington State quarterback John Mateer, the number 2 player in the portal in 247, but there are too many losses to ignore. Oklahoma lost 26 players in the portal, with 19 signing with Power 4 programs. They were in the top 100. 3 were in the top 100. Quarterback Jackson Arnold going to Auburn, wide receiver Nick Anderson going to LSU, and linebacker Deshaun McCullough going to Nebraska. And Mateer is the only top 100 addition. And they continued on with, it's also notable that 10 of Oklahoma's 15 portal additions are from the group of 5 or FCS. How many of these players making the jump will turn to be contributors? That'd be a storyline to follow in 2025. They're not wrong for that assessment. We've talked about that here at Nauseam on this channel as well as at mine over at Unfair Sports, that Oklahoma has a lot of proving to do to acquire a lot of the naysayers. That's what they're going to do. They're going to have to show everyone that they can improve and get better with the players that they added to the roster. Now, granted, the one thing that Oklahoma was very strong in last season that we saw is defense. And a lot of that defense is there. You lose a Danny Stutzman and a Billy Bowman, as well as Woody Washington, and you feel like you may have lost some components, but you retained a lot of top talent in R. Mason Thomas, who had his 9 sacks. Dominic Williams in the defensive tackle spot. Your linebackers, Kip and Kobe, they're still there. And you added some players like a Kendall Daniels on the defensive side. So you start to see that they added pieces to make sure the defense is shored up. So you're probably saying, but Jay, that's not what they're talking about in this article. They're talking about the offensive side of the ball. Well, with an offense that wasn't really able to produce, dealing with a bunch of injuries, they still produced 6 wins. Ask yourself, go back and look at the games. We talked about this before, but go back and look at the games again. Just keep refreshing yourself. If the team had an offense that could produce something, how many wins more do you think? How many of those losses would have become wins? That's the exercise I always recommend people go do, because that was it. And there's a guarantee that the Oklahoma offense will be better than they were last year. Like, this team was bottom of the barrel, awful. So there's a guarantee they're going to be better. The question is, how much better? Can they jump in the top 50? Can they jump in the top 40 or even the top 30? Those possibilities are still there, but the defense is still going to be pretty solid. Barring injury, knock on wood, this team should show and be a lot better. And there's no reason for it to be considered falling in the SEC. Yeah, granted, we lost some really good talent out there. Like, Deshaun McCullough is probably the one that hurt me the most because I had so many high expectations for him. But looking at it, he wasn't able to stay healthy, and it just did not work out, unfortunately. And a lot of other players start to pass him up. You're going to see more Samuel Mosigo out there, right? You're going to see Kip and Kobe running things at linebacker. Kendall Daniels is going to take a spot. You're going to see other linebackers really pull. There's so many players that are rotating through there that you're like, oh, okay, so you've actually got a pretty solid 2-3 deep when it comes to the linebacker room. So for Oklahoma, if anything, we'll talk about an additional young Linebacker is going to be critical for future developments, but overall, the offense itself, yeah, we got in Satania, who came from, Arkansas, Javion Gibson, who came from Arkansas Pine Bluff, who did pretty good when he played against, FBS team, a Power 4 team. You don't have a whole bunch of just name-breaking names out there, those that just really jump out. You don't have to have that, though. There's one position that never concerns me, is integration of veteran receivers into a wide receiver room. That's one room that has proven over the years, go look at all the other teams, it's proven that as long as they got actual talent and they show that they have the capabilities of getting those yards they got at the other level, G5, FCS, a lot of the time it translates up at wide receiver. You just can't have a whole bunch of freshmen running around at wide receiver and think it's going to work. That's where the questions lie. And so you got to have veterans to mix in with the young players so the young players don't have as much pressure on their back to figure things out. And then you get that with the Sooner team. You're going to get Deion Burks back. And, Jaden Gibson should return. I expect him to come around fall camp. And then I think we'll probably see the best of him once you get to conference play. But outside of that, I think that Ivan Carrion as well as Zion Kearney learned a lot over the last year about themselves and what they need to do. And having film to grow with that, you're good. Oh, yeah. The offensive line should actually be healthy. You shouldn't see 12 different configurations, all season long because you have so many players get injured, so many season injuries. I don't expect both tackles to be injured all season long with another starting guard and another starting center getting injured. No, my expectation is you're going to see a lot more players that are healthy and ready to play. And then the young guys behind them got some experience, so now they're ready. So I know I'm giving you all the sunshine pumping that you all hate, but I'm just telling you the truth. The one thing that I'm looking out for, which is, like they said, this will be a storyline to follow in 2025, is how many of these players can make that jump at this level? And if the offense can just be competent to go with what the defense has produced, can that lead them to W's? To be honest, I think it can. All you need is an offense that can move the ball a little bit. The running back showed that whenever they can get healthy and get the right type of snaps, you get some more Xavier Robinson. Javante Barnes ran really, really hard. When Salchuk was able to get his hamstring going, you saw him finding holes in that Navy game. That's what you got to get. And all you got to do is get consistency at the offensive line. So Bill Bedenbaugh's definitely got his work cut out for him. And I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that Oklahoma's going to show out and be like the top team in the conference. Not at all. What I'm telling you is that for Oklahoma to be successful, they just need some competence out there on the offensive side of the ball. You're going to hear me say that over and over the rest of the year because that's the only thing we need. So for the Sooners, in looking at this article from The Athletic, which is a solid article, I totally get where they're coming from with this. Losing a player like Nick Anderson hurts. Jackson Arnold would hurt. He's a former 5-star. But what they're going to have to do more than what Oklahoma has to do, they have to prove that they still got it. They're the ones coming from either injury or really bad, play. They've got to come back and show you that they can ball out. And all I know is the Oklahoma defense has shown us that they can do it. So why should I be stressed out about that? There's no reason to be worn out or stressed when it comes to an offense bringing in a quarterback, one of the top ones in the portal, with his offensive coordinator, and now they're going to be running the system together. Again, wide receiver is so much easier to integrate than any other position because all they got to do is know how to create separation. And the players they brought in have proven based upon their film that they can do that. So the Oklahoma Sooners basketball team is looking questionable. And we got to ask the question, is it time for Porter Moser to be done? Let's talk about that next here on Locked On Sooners. When game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet in the fourth quarter, comebacks, you can stay in the action, and you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay, which is huge. Me personally, we are looking at the NBA season, and I'm checking out a lot of these parlay builders. You can go score to 10 points, score to 15, score to 20 points. And if I want to get into the action, that's usually the things I'm looking at just for the fun of it. And the best part The app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And thank you all for tuning in to Locked On Sooners and making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all our everydayers out there. So the Oklahoma Sooners basketball team, men's basketball team, has started to hit that wall for the fourth year in a row now that Porter Moser has been here as the head coach. And so the question has been thrown out there. Should the Sooners be done with them? Are we at the point where this team is cooked? Can Porter get them back going and kind of show up? Because so I went back and started looking at the old numbers and stats, man. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, the per 40 and the per 100 possessions, the offense and defense efficiency just seems to go down as soon as they hit conference play. And this year, it's no different. Teams sitting now at 16-7, in conference 3-7. And when I looked at the schedule, the question I'm asking about the Sooners is, can Oklahoma win some of these last games? They got 8 games coming up, and 6 of those 8 are against teams with winning records, and 1 of them is against a team that already beat them. So they got Missouri coming up, and from Missouri, traveling Missouri, you got LSU, travel to Florida, Mississippi State, Kentucky at Ole Miss, Missouri comes to the crib, and then you travel to Texas to end the season. And for them to have a chance to make it to possibly the tournament, you've got to win at least 5 of them. And this being Porter's 4th year with the team, he's yet to make it to the NCAA tournament, even though he's put up some years. Last year, he put up 20 wins, but it's always a rocky up. It's an up and down roller coaster with him. That's what I've noticed over the last few years. So that loss, the last 2 losses, the loss at Auburn and then the loss at home to Tennessee, where you're losing by over 20, just about 20 points, 18 against Tennessee and 28 against Auburn. Those gaps in the win, in the losses, tells all of us that this team is not at the level of the rest of the SEC, at least. If you want even mention the rest of the country, but just the SEC itself. And then, Jeremiah Fears, love him to death, great phenom freshman. He has not been playing that good here in SEC play. This is where you're starting to see a decline. So going from being a player that felt like a de facto top 15 pick and definitely has a chance of getting drafted, it's a good shot that this young man's going to have to come back next season in order to, redeem himself and show that he's able to, play at the next level. I hate to say it, but that's kind of the way it's looking, especially in conference play. His numbers have declined in comparison to what he was doing all in out of conference. Now, for Oklahoma, you kind of would feel like this is out of conference play for them because this is the first year in the SEC. They don't know y'all. They don't know much about y'all. They haven't dealt with y'all year in and year out for you to play like they've got your number. A lot of these teams probably ain't seen Oklahoma. And that's the one thing that I ask questions about Porter. Is he the guy that can get this done? He's going to continue to, put out teams with winning records, even though based upon his last track record, I mean, he was first year at Oklahoma 19-16, and he went 15-17, then went up to 20-12. It's pretty good. And then now they're 16-7. So they're going to have to find a way to get above that hump if they think that they have a chance to even make the tournament. Now, if they can win the SEC tournament, which I'm not believing that they have a chance to do it, there's no shade or anything against, this team at all. It's just, it's been a struggle of a year for the Sooners. So I guess the question we have to ask is, with Porter and the way that he's constructed this team, because the other thing that I feel like is kind of a concern for me and been a concern for some other folks that I know that keep up with the team is he does a lot of roster turnover. And in this game, I understand that, recruiting is taking a little bit of a backseat to the transfer portal because you want to get guys that can play today. You also need to get your hands on guys that are good enough, young, that can play, like a Jeremiah Fears. You got to find a way to keep players like that. You got to retain guys like that and put them in environments and put them in situations where they can be successful. It doesn't feel like Porter is doing that for this squad, So Coach Moser is going to have to figure out what's next for getting this team back on track. In order for them to have a chance, they're going to have to win a lot of these games coming up again. They're going to have to win at least 5. So they got to get to at least 21 wins if they want to have a shot, an outside shot of making it to the tournament. You ain't getting in there with 19 wins this year at all. And the crazy part is all the teams they play that are ranked. So they have an opportunity to make statement wins. So the Missouri game on the 12th is a good chance for a statement win. Traveling to the Swamp, that's a good chance for a statement win. They should beat LSU. No guarantee, though, because the way they've been playing, in conference, you're losing to Texas and the way they've been playing, that tells you everything you need to know. They need to find a way to get revenge at least on Alabama and, redeem themselves from that 107-79 drumming. If anything, get in the tournament so you can try to find a way to play against Bama at least early and try to keep that score nice and close. But overall for Oklahoma, Porter's gonna have to figure out something with his adjustments, figure out what he needs to do to get this team back to the way they were when the season started, when they started the year off on that massive undefeated streak. Like, you start the year winning 13 games, and that Michigan win was huge. Granted, there was a little luck there, but then Bedlam beating Arizona, who's currently ranked. They've got they had 2 ranked wins to start the year, so you should feel good about where this team is going. But then it just fell apart. 4 straight losses in conference, and they've lost 3 of the last 4 games, even though they got that big 30-point win against Vanderbilt. I don't think that this team is terrible. I do think that this team is just a little bit underneath mid, which is not a good thing. You want to be at least mid and up, so you have a chance to make that 60-18 seed for the tournament. But I don't know. Every time I'm watching, I'm just like, it just gets painful. The turnovers are there. It's similar with the women too. It's like the turnovers is just all over the place. And it's like, why can't anyone hold the ball at Oklahoma? It feels like it's like that bug, the fumbling bug has hit everybody on in both sports, as well as women's basketball. But if they can turn some of that down, I think they have a chance. That Tennessee loss, though, a lot of people were asking questions about this thing. There was no chance that Oklahoma had in this game, even with the game being close early. Tennessee is just a much better team, the way they've balled. And just no one for Oklahoma has been stepping up to truly just take over. Like, it's been a mixed bag of who's doing, like Jalen Moore get up there and get the double-digit points, and you've seen Fears get his 21. I think that was against was that Vanderbilt that he got that game where he got that. But yeah, the Vanderbilt game, he showed up and showed out, but it's the inconsistency needs to be fixed, and Porter's got his work to do. It shouldn't be this difficult. I think that that's the one thing that a lot of Sooner fans will agree with. It should not be this tough. So we'll see what happens next. The first ever quarterback in Oklahoma history won a Super Bowl MVP. Got to talk about the Super Bowl here on Locked On Sooners. And thank you all for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing. You can find us everywhere, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss a single episode. This special evening edition, as I've been traveling, as I mentioned, and I'm back, and John is enjoying some time off. We're going to get back on track to our morning shows starting tomorrow. So keep your eyes open for an early episode. But I want to talk about the Super Bowl because Sooners, once again, made history. We talked about it. 7 players in the Super Bowl. That's from the team. I think 8 total. That includes players that are on the IR or that would actually, be eligible to win a ring on the team. But you got it. Jalen Hurts wins Super Bowl MVP as the Eagles just dismantled the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, it was as bad. That game was just, I'm watching it like, wow, this is impressive. I did not expect this game to go as crazy as it did, but hey, we got ourselves a big one. And what I liked about Hurts and the way that he played in that game is he took his time. Not something that happens quite often. It's not always a situation where a quarterback can feel comfortable and let the game come to them. But the Eagles did exactly what you're supposed to do to beat a team like Kansas City. They just kept the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. That's it. That's great. That's it. And the other way they were able to do that is they were able to get pressure with just 4 men. Now that's something that I expect the Oklahoma football team to do next season is find a way to get pressure with just 4 without having to do a whole bunch of blitzing. The Eagles did that. They just tossed around that Kansas City offensive line, especially because that line was dealing with a lot of injuries. You know, their all-pro left guard had to be moved to left tackle because of injuries. And the only player, one player that was holding his own was Creed Humphreys. He was holding his own, but it was bad. It was bad overall for them. And so for the Chiefs, they just needed to keep Mahomes upright. But Mahomes felt in this game, similar to he did against Tampa Bay, that the integrity of his offensive line was starting to break apart. It kind of felt like the scene in The Winter Soldier where Nick Fury's in his car and they just kept hitting it with the sledge deal that just kept hitting his windows, and the integrity just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. As that game was going on, it felt like that was happening to Patrick Mahomes. The more and more the game was happening, the more and more the integrity of his line was going down, and he had to find a way to either I find a way to get myself going forward, or I'm going to get sacked every single time. And it's just all you saw was that line is always around the edges, collapsing in on him, and he couldn't go nowhere. That's how you win games. That was bully ball at its finest, because I said this, the Eagles had the ball for 36 minutes and 58 seconds. The Chiefs had the ball for 23 minutes, 2 seconds. Yes, they had the ball for more than 13 minutes in comparison. And it was made to where drive after drive after drive, they didn't last very long for the Chiefs. And then you start and by getting that type of pressure, you make it easier to be able to cause those turnovers. We saw that with the Sooners this past season when they were able to do it against Alabama. When they started playing that bully ball and Alabama was testing the Sooners and saying, nah, you're going to go ahead and run the ball. We dare you to run the ball. We're not going to make your quarterback beat us. We're going to make you beat us on the ground because we feel like we can just outmuscle you, and they couldn't. Chiefs in this situation, they just had no answers for that Eagles defensive front. It's like every time you look up, three play. They had their first possession of over 3 plays after the first drive was in the third quarter, and they had a 5-play possession for 15 yards. Then from there was 5 plays, 1 play. Then they got the 12-play touchdown after they're down 37 to 46. That's it. They had a 5-minute drive that happened after they basically kept giving the ball back. They couldn't run the ball. And Mahomes, like I said, he looked like he was nervous about the integrity of his line. So that's the saving grace there. Jalen Hurts played at the level that was expected. I've seen a few people say this, that basically the Chiefs said, if we're going to lose this game, it's going to be because Jalen Hurts beat us. We're not going to let Saquon do anything to us. Saquon finished the game 25 carries, 57 yards. Not at the top of his numbers you normally would get. But 23, 57, 2 yards per carry was pretty low for Saquon. Hurts finished the game 11 carries, 72 yards. So as the Chiefs were saying, you're going to beat us with your pass and we're going to stop the run, at a certain point they realized, okay, we've got to go ahead and start forcing Hurts to throw the ball. And he started to throw it well. They figured out, okay, we got to start stopping these wide receivers. So Hurts just started scrambling. It's when you start seeing those 10-yard scrambles, 7-yard scrambles, 17-yard scrambles, 7 yards. And he would start to move around. 11 carries, 72 yards to go with his 221 yards in passing. That pass, that beautiful deep pass to Devontae Smith he got A.J. Brown somehow, going, also throwing a touchdown. Letting A.J. Brown catch a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So I know A.J. Brown's probably a lot happier now than he was probably throughout the season because things were not going the way they wanted in the pass game. And I said this when Jalen Hurts was at Alabama, that he always had it was something about him to me that I always felt like he can be a serviceable NFL quarterback. I had a few people laugh at me. Like, I was like, I'm serious. I don't feel like he's going to be your MVP quarterback every single week in, week out, every single year. But I do think that he can go out there and do enough to win games, especially at the most critical times. But that's always how I felt. I never felt like he was the most talented, but I think he's very talented. So don't get my words twisted. The biggest thing, though, is he had so many glaring things he needed to work on. I mean, hence why he left, he left Alabama because he wasn't going to overtake Tua, went to Oklahoma, worked underneath Lincoln Riley. I know y'all hate that name, but still came here, worked on his game, and got better. You saw the numbers dramatically jump from Bama to Oklahoma. But you started to see him truly be able to lead. Then when he got in the NFL, you saw some of that stuff when he first started, but then you started seeing teams adjust. And that's the one thing about the NFL, and that's the one thing about the SEC too. I like to always make mention is those defensive coordinators' minds, bro, they're tough. They're tough to crack, and they're tough codes to get past. That's why usually you see a sophomore slump out of quarterbacks. Once they get film, they look at your habits and try to find how they can make sure that they're in the spot where you don't want them to be. The question is, can your quarterback keep reinventing himself to where he doesn't lean on the same old habits? To be honest, that's where Mahomes is so dangerous. He doesn't lean on a lot of his old habits unless his offensive line has a compromised integrity. And this is the second Super Bowl where you saw compromised integrity on his offensive line made Mahomes do things that he would not normally do. He panicked. He had no choice. But Philadelphia was smart. You go look at that roster full of a whole bunch of them Georgia Bulldogs. Whole bunch of big defensive linemen, top dudes. That's what they did. They went after the best defensive lineman possible. They went after guys that went to some of these big schools. I mean, Florida State and Josh Sweat, who was eating them alive on the outside. But that's what they did. They figured out, look, I'm just going to draft dudes that play in the playoffs. That's their strategy. You play in the playoffs? Cool. That's what they're going after. So you started seeing a lot of that. That's where we start seeing a lot of that success. And so for the Eagles, congratulations to them getting that Super Bowl, getting Jalen Hurts one. Lane Johnson, once again, showed up and showed out. Another Sooner gets himself his second ring in NFL. And yeah, I enjoyed the first part of the game. And then when I saw that it was about to get bad, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to try to find a way to go to bed early. But I couldn't. I had to see if Mahomes could show us some magic. But hopefully a lot of those other Sooners that haven't gotten their rings yet, Kansas City does. And Kansas City continues to bring more Sooners onto their roster and push for another championship, which I think they can. I don't think they're done. A lot of people are saying they are. I don't see it. I don't see it yet. Mahomes is too young. Andy Reid still got a lot of tricks on their sleeve. The biggest thing is they're going to need some wide receivers, period. Wide receivers look old. Look like they couldn't separate anymore. They need some wide receivers. And I think they'll get that. Defensive line and get to keep the defense shored up. See some big stuff. And so that'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Shout out to all you, our everydayers, who always tune in and share the show itself. You can follow me over at Unfair Sports. Follow my guy John at John97 on the Twitters. You can also read his writing over at Sooners Wire. And you can also see my content where I dive a little bit deeper into stuff over at Unfair Sports here on YouTube. And so for John, we will catch you all sometime tomorrow. I'll drop the next episodes, and when John gets back, we'll probably debate all of this. So thanks for tuning in. And yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of the other episodes. So for John, Boomer Sooner.